Welcome to the Wedding Obsessed podcast designed to help you plan your dream day. I'm your host, Adriana, and each week I'm joined by the industry's top professionals, celebs, influencers, and friends who are sharing their best tips, trends, advice, and mistakes they've made so you don't have to. This is the Prenup Podcast. Every bride wants to look like the vision of beauty, health, and exuberance on her wedding day. Many brides will really up the ante or go to extremes during their wedding planning to make sure they're looking and feeling their absolute best. Our guest today is sharing all kinds of tips on just that. If we want better skin, nails, hairs, bodies, less brain fog, so that we can take on this task of planning a wedding on top of the million other things we have going on in our life, which is something that absolutely every bride wants for her wedding day and beyond. But there is an overwhelming amount of information out there on diets, supplements, and practices that we're told we need to partake in for optimum health. We can't spend 2 hours on our morning and night routines, an hour working out, an hour on our cosmetic, plus another 4 hours of sunning our buttholes, saunaing, cold plunging, red light therapy, all of the other things. We have jobs, we have weddings to plan, we have loved ones to spend time with, and responsibilities. At a certain point, if we did every single thing that we're told to for our health and beauty, we would just have nothing else. So today I'm chatting with Dr. Jessie Hehmeyer about creating balanced routines that work for the individual bride so that she can shine on her wedding day and beyond. Dr. H is the physician and founder of Well Empowered, who practices a root cause, scientific, data-driven approach with her patients, which allows them to look and feel their best so that they can be their best. I'm very pleased to welcome today's guest, Dr. H, to the Prenup Podcast.
We are very nomadic, my husband and I are. So what you see, this is Airbnb life. So just,
Really? Where are you right now?
We're currently, we live in Switzerland, but right now we're in Boston.
I'm so jealous that you live in Switzerland. I visited for the first time in September.
Oh, nice. Where did you go?
We went to, I don't know why I always forget, what is the main?
Zurich or Geneva or Lucerne.
We stayed in Zurich and then we visited Lucerne while we were there too, and I loved it.
Awesome. That's where we live. We live in Lucerne. We probably pass each other on the street. It's a small place.
It is so gorgeous. And everyone said, like, you have to go to Zurich, you have to go to Zurich. But I loved Lucerne so much.
Oh, I'm so happy to hear that.
Oh,
it's a special place.
It is unbelievable. It's like a storybook.
Truly, we call it living in the Swiss bubble.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, we go there and we're like, la, 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 la. I don't hear you, world. I don't hear you.
Seriously. So what brought you guys to Boston?
So my stepdaughter, she and her husband live here, and they just had our second grandbabe, a little girl, about a week and a half ago. Thank you.
Oh,
so
that's so exciting.
We got here on Saturday to meet the new addition and be together.
That's awesome. How long are you in Boston?
We are here through Thursday, and then we go to Chicago, and then we go to Phoenix for a conference. So like, we're just, it's one of the great things about work life these days is you can be many different places, right?
So true. And one of the things I wanted to touch on with you today, ironically, is that, there are so many brides, people in general, but definitely people who want to take health and wellness and beauty and all of that in a natural way into their own hands, in like a naturopathic way, rather. And it's so difficult for people to get that experience if they don't live in New York, LA, or, I'm sure Switzerland has a huge base for that as well. But it's so difficult to get a naturopathic doctor who's going to treat root causes if you're not in one of these hubs.
Yeah.
So it's really nice that you're remote and you offer those services.
Yeah. I love it. And people are like, so where are you? I'm like, wherever you are. That's where I am.
I love it. So let's get right into it, because I know brides are really anxious and eager to get the scoop on the way they can really optimize their health for their wellness, their beauty. I hate to keep, harping on beauty, but it's such a factor when it comes to weddings and brides.
Absolutely.
And it all really is married to each other, right? If we're treating something like within our body and our gut, like, we're going to look better, is my understanding.
Absolutely. And, fundamentally, like, who doesn't want to look their best? So as a way to be freed up and be their best, right, is how I
Absolutely.
think about it, right?
Yes. Yes.
Hmm.
It's so important. So let's get into just what we're putting on and in our bodies, because when we're getting ready for our weddings, especially, hopefully this is something that we're going to take into our whole lifetime, into our marriage, into our life, whatever. But starting with that wedding process, because people really want to look and feel so gorgeous on their wedding day, they are a little more willing to up the ante on what they're doing. But it can get a little bit overwhelming just because there's so much information. And what I love about you is, much like wedding planning, one size does not fit all. What works for one bride is not going to work for another. So it's more of an individual approach, the way you do things. So if you could give a recommendation to a bride who's really looking to jumpstart her health regimen, how would you say that the individual could go about doing that?
Yeah, that's such a great question. And what I would say is to begin with a little bit of envisioning, right? So to actually first start with what is my intention for my wedding day. And also, I love, Adriana, how you brought in like, and the rest of your life, right? But like,
Totally.
okay, let's start with your wedding day and have you begin to tell the story of how you intend to feel, to look, and to be on your wedding day.
Mm-hmm.
Like, actually write the story of, I'm walking down the aisle and, tell it in first person present tense. So
Yes.
you get really clear about the many important aspects of how you intend to be and feel on that day.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's going to be unique to you, right? So you're going to tell that story. You might even press pause on this conversation and do it right now about you present tense. I'm walking down the aisle and you could go throughout the entirety of your weekend or the entirety of your evening if you'd like, but really getting clear on what is my intention for
Yes.
myself and how I feel and how I look and how I be on my wedding day. And then from there, right, because as you said, this really is a personal journey, you might step back, come back to the present moment and look at, okay, what is one action I could take right now that would move me towards that future? Just one, right? Getting clear on just one action. And by the way, it may be an inaction, right? I say action, but it may, could be a yes action or a no action, right? A
Okay.
yes action might be, okay, I'm going to start being more mindful of how I'm feeling my body, right? How might you do that? Well, I'm actually just going to take a week to track, pen and paper, Google document, whatever. Doesn't need to be fancy. My Fitness Pal, a gajillion other apps, right? But just starting to get present to like, how am I actually feeling my body? I think I know, but oftentimes when people start to get really present, they see things that they just wouldn't have seen otherwise. Not good, bad, right, wrong, just true, right?
Yes.
Or it could be something like, well, I already know I drink a little more alcohol than is ideal for that intended future, right? So I'm going to start playing a game of no more than X amount in any given night, right? In what's really important about that, why I'm not giving you a specific number, is you want to meet yourself where you are.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I work with some people who, their job entails a lot of entertaining. So they're very used to a couple of times a week. Maybe they're having 5, 6 drinks a night and that's just a work week. We're not even talking about the weekends, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
so for them, a better game is maybe it's 4 drinks max. Now, some of you will listen to that and think that's absurd. I should, like I have 3 and I'm done, right? Okay, that's fine. That's you. And
Yeah.
you want to
Yeah.
honor your truth, but really doing this exercise of thinking about, okay, what is my intention? And what is the first step to move towards that intention?
Yeah. It's very smart to put it that way, because I think that's why we get so overwhelmed when we're inundated with information. It's like, okay, well, I want to make sure, my body looks tight and my skin looks good and this and that and that. And like I need to do all these million different things. But if you take it one step at a time, as with anything in life, and I'm so guilty of this, like I will stress myself out so bad because I'll take on 2 million things and I can't do that. It's not realistic. So starting small and figuring out like, okay, what's one little baby step I can do? And then building on that. You can always build.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, it's great to notice that tendency of like, okay, I tend to take on more than really is feasible. And then
Yes.
I don't do any of it because I feel overwhelmed or, like whatever. Right. So just
Yes.
noticing that tendency, you can begin to learn from it. And just like you
Yes.
said, okay, let's chunk it out. Let's just start with one thing and practice that over and over and over again. And
Definitely.
then move on to the next one.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny, like we see all of these things on the internet and like you and I were talking about when we first got started, like the beauty and the terror of technology. It's so good because we learn all of these things and all of these practices that we might not otherwise have had access to. But that comes into play with the overwhelm also. It's like, am I supposed to be doing all of these billion things? So I want to get a little bit more granular with you today on specific concerns for brides when they're getting ready for their weddings. These are some of the things that they are, I would say, either concerned about or more cognizant. They really want to like take these matters into their hands. So even though this is sort of a vanity metric, I think that we are all going to learn from you, Dr. H, like where this fills the gaps of your whole body health. Because you might think, oh, I'm treating my hair, but there's a bigger piece to that. So something that a lot of brides will want to do is we'll start from the top. They want to get their hair in order. They want to make sure that it's shiny, it's full. I think a big issue with that and a misconception is like if you are genetically a person with fine hair, like you are not going to take a supplement that's going to give you, something that looks like you have extensions. But how can we, with what we have genetically, optimize our hair health just to start?
Right. Well, first of all, I love that you're grounded in reality, right? Like, yes. If you, like me, I have lots of hair, but lots of thin hair. My hair is
Yes.
never going to look. I remember, like my stepdaughter, for example, it takes her an hour to blow dry her hair. I'm like, 5 minutes later, I'm like, I'm done. Like I'm not having her hair, like right aside.
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. So totally fine though, in the way of optimizing what you have, right? And when it comes to hair health, a few things I think about, okay, what do we need to build beautiful hair? Well, we need protein. So you want to make sure you're getting sufficient high quality protein.
Okay. What does
And
that look like? Because I know
yeah,
I didn't realize this until, and I'm 31 years old. I didn't realize this until this year that my bone broth that I'm drinking with protein is not a complete protein. I don't even know what that means. So like, Dr. H, help us.
yes, 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 yes. So, okay, so complete proteins fundamentally, a little nutritional science exercise here,
Yes.
we have certain amino acids that are required, which mean we cannot make them in our body. We need to consume them to get them. Amino acids are the building blocks of protein. So let's pretend you were making a Lego tower. You would need the Legos to make the tower, right? Like it's like they're the Legos of the Lego tower, so to speak, right? These
Got it.
amino acids.
Hmm.
And most animal proteins, so I would suspect, I'm curious about your bone broth. That's interesting because most animals' proteins are complete proteins.
Okay, so I'm already wrong to start. So, obviously as far as this episode goes, know a lot about weddings. I don't know a lot
Oh
about
gosh.
proteins and health, and that's why the expert is here with us. So, yeah, like fill me in. Like, what is a complete versus a non-complete protein?
Yeah. Complete versus incomplete. So most animal-based proteins, in fact, all animal-based proteins. So we're thinking about chicken, fish, seafood, turkey, red meat, pork, all those things, they are complete proteins, meaning they have all of the essential amino acids, all of the essential Legos you need to build a Lego tower, right?
Okay.
And then incomplete proteins, the only complete protein that is vegetarian is soy. So if you're eating tofu or edamame beans, you're getting all of those building blocks you need. But something like beans, for example, is an incomplete protein, which is why you'll hear about rice and beans, because the rice and the beans, they together make a complete protein. So that's what we have there. So, for in the way of, quality of protein, people will have their unique preferences, right? And so if someone is willing to eat a variety of protein sources, that's going to be my vote. Now, I understand not everybody's willing to do that, right? I do work with people who are vegetarian, and I do work with people who are vegan. So I'm going to meet you where you are on that and look at, okay, great. Within the construct of what's really important to you, whether it's for religious reasons or ethical reasons, let's see how we can check this box, right? So there are many different ways to skin the cat. And fundamentally, we want to get you enough protein so you can optimize your hair, have it look, you need that protein to build your hair. So in the way of grams, I would invite you to think about, okay, whatever you see as your ideal weight, listener, you want to take that number and at a minimum cut it in half to get your protein needs, and probably more than that.
Okay.
So you probably want to up that, maybe if you take 0.75, you can take out your phone, your calculator on your phone, and take what you see as your ideal weight, multiply it by 0.75. That's about where you want to be from a protein standpoint.
Okay.
And if you're, especially if you're active, so making sure you're getting that many grams of protein a day. For most women, if you're like, ugh, I'm not doing this exercise, just to give you a number to work with, right? 80 to 90 grams of protein. 80 grams of protein a day, spread out throughout your day. That's a great place to target.
That's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair. Okay. So in addition to protein, is there anything else that we should really be looking for in order to really get that hair health the way that we want it? Any other supplements or practices?
Yeah. Well, I would also, layer on another aspect of nutrition, and that is healthy fats. And what are healthy fats? Well, from a scientific perspective, I'll tell you that, and then I'll give you examples. So we're talking about mono and polyunsaturated fats. Those are the ones that are going to do our bodies the most good. Okay. And they're things like avocado, guacamole, nuts, nut butters, seed butters, olives and olive oil, all those yummy things. Our hair needs fat. Now, I am older than you. And when I was in college, and it's embarrassing to say, right before the internet, but it's true.
I remember the days.
It's true. The internet was not a thing when I was in college. We had email. That was about it. Dial up. And, fat-free eating was all the rage. And so in that moment, we didn't have access to all the great information we have now, right? I was a devotee of fat-free eating. And I have to tell you, Adriana, my hair looked awful. I mean, it was so dry, right? I look back at photos and I'm like, oh, that is so embarrassing. I can't believe I did that to myself.
But you don't know what you don't know. And
right. Absolutely.
Even when I was a kid, I mean, that was what my parents were told was healthy. So, my mom will still say things like, oh, it's fat free. I'm like, they're Swedish fish. That's horrible for us,
Oh my gosh, I love it. That's so good.
And she's very health conscious.
You're snap out of it, Mom.
She's great. She's a healthy balance of her sweets and her health. So she's come a long way. But
that's so good. That's great.
But so back to what you were saying about
So our healthy fats, and then I would also tie in there things like, fish and seafood, low mercury, high omega-3, things like salmon or Arctic trout, or if you'll do sardines, great, trout, shrimp. Those are all examples of things we would vote for in that case. And then you asked about supplements. And, I think about this from a high level, why someone's hair is maybe not as healthy as it could be, right? Maybe they've noticed it used to be one way and then it's not. Yeah. There's going to be some individuality to that, right? Are there nutrient deficiencies? Are there hormonal imbalances? Those are some of the things I start to think about with someone who is like, my hair was, or is there something going on with your thyroid? Those are things I think about when someone says my hair was this way and now it's not. Doing a little bit of digging on that. But then from a high level, we could take what we just talked about and look at, for most people, what are some, safe, easy supplements that I do see making a difference. A real high quality collagen powder.
Okay.
Vitamin C actually is important for creating collagen. So that's kind of like a double whammy and can be helpful for the skin also. Now you can get vitamin C from food in lots of different places, everything from peppers to broccoli to, berries and things like that. But, so I always look at, okay, some people are going to be more interested in using some supplementation. Some people are going to be more interested in using food. So how do we have this whole puzzle come together? So from a supplement standpoint, again, I'd say collagen powder, love. Omega-3 fatty acids, love, perhaps a little bit of vitamin C. And then from a hair standpoint, everybody knows biotin is great. But it doesn't always solve the problem, right? So if, you try these things and you go, my hair is still not what it used to be, then you want to dig deeper. Then you want to start to look at, okay, getting some labs done to really identify what's going on in your body.
Okay. Yeah, that makes total sense. And, it's one of those things we hear about these supplements. I mean, I've tried all of them, I think. Honestly, I hear about something, I'm like, oh, it'll work, I'll get it. But in the back of my mind, I know it's not true. Like for me, a biotin supplement makes me break out. I get acne with that.
That will happen, yes.
Yeah, so that's just, it's not a right fit for me. And with other things, it could be doing something in your body that maybe, like, I'm lucky that the acne came forward because that's something that's like a physical, I see it. There's something going on in my body that's making me break out. But maybe sometimes there's something going on in your body that doesn't come to surface and isn't right for you. So I think the lab piece is probably pretty important, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And, when I work with people, we always go based on data. We always go based on, your number so we can figure out, what's the targeted approach forward rather than throwing darts.
Totally. Okay. I love it. Oh my gosh. This is so great. I'm learning so much. And I think this is very beneficial for a lot of people because it's such a common concern. And I think this is actually a great segue into our next beauty piece, which is going to be our skin. So we were just talking about, my acne, which I've struggled back and forth my whole life. But I think that is not just acne. I want to cover, skin in general, but maybe we can start with acne because I think that is a struggle for women, especially women getting married who are like, I had to deal with this crap in high school. Why am I an adult woman about to get married and I'm breaking out? So what is your approach to acne?
Yeah. So I take a multi-tiered approach to acne. Okay. So for someone who is just like you said, they're like, I'm a grown adult and this is still happening, right? Yeah. The first thing I start to think about is food sensitivities. So food sensitivities are delayed reactions. They can take up to 72 hours to show up. And the immune response that's happening there, the antibodies we produce that lead to these food sensitivities last in the body for about 6 weeks. Okay. So when people say, well, I tried to cut it out or I did this and, or I only eat it a little bit, it's like, ooh, if it's a food sensitivity, we're not going to know, right? That's not enough. Like reducing actually is insufficient in this case. So with food sensitivities, there are a few most common food sensitivities. And I'll share those with your listeners in a moment. Please. But also there are some that we just can't anticipate, right? So we can do food sensitivity tests. And I am not a fan of the over-the-counter ones. I use very high-quality professional grade ones because if you're going to spend the money to do it, we want to get accurate results, right? Yeah. But just from if you're someone who's sitting there and just wants to try something to see if it makes a difference, when it comes to skin, the number one most common food sensitivity is dairy, right? So it is the way the body most commonly reacts that's not digestive in nature. people often think, well, if I were reacting to dairy, my digestion would be messed up. Absolutely not true. Oftentimes it shows up in the skin.
Wow.
So dairy is number one, and that means everything from yogurt to cheese to cow-based milk, right? So anything that comes from a cow, sheep, or goat, that's dairy.
Okay.
Eggs are not dairy. I know sometimes that's a little bit of a confusion, but good news, you can keep your eggs, right? And then the next, I'll share the top three food sensitivities. Number one is dairy. Number two is gluten. I know people are like, really? Yes, really. And you know, if you're not sure what foods contain gluten, my encouragement would just be, just Google it. You'll find a million different resources.
Yeah.
And then the third one is yeast. So oftentimes people have a reaction to yeast, but also have a yeast overgrowth, which ties into another cause of acne, which is a disrupted microbiome. So your microbiome lives in your digestive tract. And when that microbiome, which is supposed to be made of good bacteria mostly, when there's a disruption, either there is a bad bacteria present, or there's a parasite present, or there's yeast overgrowth, it absolutely can show up in the skin.
Okay.
So that yeast reaction can be partially coming from the gut, but also can be kind of more systemic, floating around in your body also. So in that case, it becomes a little more complicated because we both want to avoid yeast and we want to not feed yeast. So then we have to think about like, okay, well, what feeds yeast? Well, yeast's favorite food is sugar, sugar all day long. And then also simple carbohydrates, which don't taste sweet, but have the same impact as sugar. So these are things like white rice and white potatoes and regular pasta and, you know, stuff like that.
Yeah. Wow. Oh my gosh. It's so fascinating because yeast is not one that I ever thought of. Like I unfortunately am a gluten-free person because I have the sensitivity. I don't have celiacs, but you know, it manifests itself in very interesting ways, psoriasis and acne and, you know, same thing with dairy. So like I notice it on my skin. That's like the way it manifests for me. But you're right. I think that especially if it's a newer allergy or reaction that you're having to these things, because it can appear later in life. Like I didn't notice this when I was young, but later in life, I started to notice it on my skin. Like it can be really confusing for people. If it's an issue with what I'm eating, why isn't it a digestive issue? But everything starts in the gut, right? Like
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So yeah. And you know, with those food sensitivities, if you are going to like, you know, take a do-it-yourself DIY approach sort of thing, you want to pull those things out. And you actually really want to diligently keep them out for at least 6 weeks. Because it just takes that time. And now, you know, at the end of that 6 weeks, it's not like, okay, bring them back in all at once. Yeah. If you want to learn, you know, maybe you find that one works for you, but not the other, then you want to bring them in one at a time so you can test the waters and see how your body responds.
So interesting. So Dr. H, just out of curiosity, with your services, do you provide people with, I don't want to say a nutrition plan, but do you provide them with maybe substitutes that they could use or direct them to someone?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Okay. I love it when we get to that point. It's like, okay, let's come up with your swapportunities, right? What are things? Yeah, I love that. Right? What are things that are going to work for you, your taste buds, your lifestyle, the amount of time you want to spend making food, all the different things, right? So I have a pretty comprehensive toolkit of like, okay, let's get down to business. And we want to figure out what are good solutions for you, right? Because what works for one person isn't going to work for someone else. Either, you know, they don't like the taste of it or it's more expensive than I want or whatever, but there's a solution out there.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay. This is so fascinating. I could talk about this specific all day, but I know that people have other things that they want to hear about as well. So I want to ask you, because most people listen to the podcast, but it is available on YouTube if anyone wants to check it out, if you want to see the clips. If you're looking at Dr. H, you were just seeing a vision of gorgeous beauty. Like your skin, like you were just, your teeth, your eyes, like, and we're on a not, the most high definition connection, but you really are glowing from the inside out. So you're a great model for your
Thank you so
practices.
much.
So,
Thank
and
you.
I could pump you up all day, but I have to ask, like, when you told me at the beginning that you're a grandmother,
Yes.
so I'm thinking to myself, like, how is this woman a grandmother looking the way she looks?
Yeah.
So how can we get our skin to look like yours and just be
Well,
like
and I'll give
youthful glowing?
full disclosure. I am a step grandmother. So,
Okay,
there
fair.
is that. Yeah. But I am 47 years old. So there you go.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're young, but you still look incredible. I mean,
Thank
great
you.
skin is
Thank you.
great skin.
Yeah. But I really am such a big believer in fueling our bodies from the inside out,
Yeah.
right? So prioritizing that high quality protein, making sure we get enough sleep, right? Sleep is so important for our detoxification pathways in our brain and in our body, right? And for me, I have to tell you, Adriana, that was late. I was later to the party on the sleep thing because I was too busy partying when I was younger, to be totally honest. But I got there. I got there eventually. And, so it really is, how we're nutrient dense foods, lots of, colorful vegetables that are rich in minerals and are not just going to provide our body with antioxidants, but they're also going to support our detox pathways. So it is a matter of practicing what I preach. And I love this work. And I, like you, I want to feel my best. I want to look my best. It really, to me, it's a gateway to be my best. So it's just really important to me.
It shows, and I'm so grateful that you're being so generous with all of this information, because I really think it's a kickstart. It's not a substitute, and like anything that you consume, be a podcast or on the internet or whatever, like it's not a substitute for a great medical practice and like really getting that service to yourself through a medical professional, but it just opens the door to people that it'll make them think about things that they haven't thought about before. And yes, this is a wedding podcast, but our brides especially, they are so serious about like wanting to look and feel their best for their wedding day. That it's this one day that they put all this onus on. And I think if they knew how important these things were to fueling not only their beauty, but their whole life, like it would be a no-brainer. And it makes a huge difference. Like you are going to have that glow when you see a bride who's just glowing from the inside out. Like that's health. You can only put Band-Aids on so many things. Like, and no knock to anyone. I love my Botox. I get my Botox. I will not.
I get my Botox too, to be honest. I do.
Yes, it's wonderful, and I will not give it up. But and I love that you said you get it too, because I think that there's also this idea of, like naturopathic, like I want to do my things. You can marry the things. Like it doesn't have to be.
Absolutely. Yes. I agree completely. And I have nothing against people who choose to do the fillers. I haven't done the fillers.
Yeah.
And like, I totally get it. Like, I understand why people do fillers. I really do.
Totally. When the time is right, I will be getting a facelift. Like I want to engage in all the things, but I think if you really want to optimize, like if you're going all the way to get the Botox, get the filler, do whatever, like kudos to you. You're making an investment in your beauty. I think that's great. But what a better investment, like you'll get so much more out of it. You'll look even better if you're doing those things from the inside out. And like, you're just going to get so many benefits from it.
Absolutely. And, one of the things I love about working with brides is that it really can be a line in the sand moment, right? It can be like you are in the process of shifting eras, right? You're going from an era of, single and everything that represents for you, even while you were dating, right? It's going to be, this is a new era, you being married and everything that you envision coming with that. So to step into that new era and begin to home in on, okay, how do I want my health and my vitality to be, and how do I want to look and feel on my wedding day, and also beyond, right? This is not a finish line approach. And I don't work with people who, once in a while I'll have a woman call me and say, I'm getting married in 6 weeks. I'm like, oh, I wish you all the best. Like, I'm not your solution, right?
No.
So, really playing the long game, because to me, it's fundamentally, it's about self-love. And so, coming at it from self-love is really looking at, okay, what's my next step? What's my next step? And just like we were saying out of the gate is, building on habits that you can sustain that really honor your intention for your health and your life.
Oh my gosh. I love you. I'm like,
it's mutual. I promise.
And the earlier you start, the better. So, a lot of people ask with everything wedding related, well, when should I do this? When should I do that? And my answer is almost always the sooner the better. Like, get on top of it, get it done. And with this, I mean, this is not only an investment in looking and feeling beautiful on your wedding day and through your marriage, but for your whole life. Like, this will change the way you feel, the way you look, and the way you act. And speaking of that, like, I think a lot of times we'll hear about bridezillas. That's a term that people will often say, and I give them a lot of grace. I use it lovingly if I'm going to use the term, but I think we all get bent out of shape when we're planning a wedding. It's this extra layer of what we're doing in our life. We're taking on this like little side gig of a job, and we already have a job and family and social life and all these other obligations to tend to. So no doubt stress is going to be a factor in this. So when it comes to stress, and I know that stress is something that we need to have, like it's a natural thing in our life, but it's, I guess, the way we manage it. Like, do you have any recommendations on managing stress through the wedding planning process so that our hair isn't falling out and our gut isn't aggravated and all those things?
Yes, absolutely. So one ritual that I am such a fan of and would encourage every one of you listeners to take on is creating bookends for your days.
Okay.
And these bookends, what they look like is at the beginning of your day, take a moment and get connected to your intention for your health and your life, right? So you want to start there.
Yes.
And then from there, move about your day. And at the end of the day, you want to begin looking at your wins. In other words, what are the actions you took that you're really proud of yourself for?
Okay.
And starting to build this habit of acknowledging yourself for who you're being and what you're doing.
Yes.
And so these two bookends of the day, your intention at the beginning of the day, and then acknowledging yourself. And you might even reflect on, okay, where could I have played a better game? That would also be of use too.
Totally. Yeah, that for anyone saying like, oh, I don't have time for this, like make it a 30-second practice. Like, do you have 1 minute in your day that you can spare? Like 30 seconds.
Right.
Day, 30 seconds.
100%. Exactly. You got it right. 30 seconds can change the world. Truly.
It really can. And I think sometimes we just have to do it to realize that. Like we'll start thinking about things and it becomes this little monster in our head. It's like, when am I going to figure out when I'm going to do that? Just do it and the rest will fall into play.
Absolutely.
So you mentioned earlier, and this was something that I wanted to ask you about as well, because part of the stress aspect, I feel that a lot of brides will end up losing sleep because they're just trying to fit all of these things into the day. And you say that sleep is primo, not only for, your life and your health, but also for your beauty. You mentioned it when we were talking about skin. Mm-hmm. So out of curiosity, is this something that varies person to person? Like, Or do you think everyone needs 8 hours, no exceptions?
So it definitely varies person to person, right?
Okay.
Some people really genuinely will wake up naturally after 7 hours, and
Yes.
others 9 hours, right? And that's kind of one of the ways you can start to look at, okay, if I didn't have an alarm, and yes, I still have an alarm, so don't worry. But if I didn't, really, like, how long would I sleep? And you can get a sense of, a guesstimate of the amount of time that's ideal for you. So there is definitely some uniqueness to the amount of time, but 8 is pretty average.
Okay.
And then, in the way of looking at, okay, so if you're far off the mark on that one, what's in the way? What's in the way? Are you scrolling? Are you doing, I like to call it, you may have heard the term revenge procrastination, right? Right? It's like at the end of the day, it's like I've been giving all day. And so I just need like some me time. And that's when people get in this like endless scroll or online shopping or, like whatever.
Yes.
So looking at, okay, what is this? Why am I getting, if 7 hours is my magic number, why am I getting 5? Right? Is it a delay in my bedtime? Am I struggling to fall asleep? Is it too much alcohol, right? Alcohol definitely disrupts sleep. And that's true even if you don't notice it, right? So if you were to wear one of these sleep trackers, an Oura Ring or the like, you would get to see in real life how alcohol affects your sleep. But there we have that. Or is it, are you on a hamster wheel of never enough? In other words, you just keep piling more and more on your plate to the point where you actually are only left with 5 hours to sleep. So why someone's not getting enough sleep is going to be unique to them. And, starting to, again, just make one shift, right? If you're currently at 5 hours a night, maybe it's a matter of, okay, I'm going to set an alarm on my phone that I will honor, period, right? Yeah. And put it down, put it in the other room on airplane mode at 10:30. I'm just making that up, but just figuring out, okay, how do I go from 5 to 5.5 hours? How do I go, creating that consistency?
Yeah, totally. And it's a piece of, I know it's not the whole thing, but it's a piece of our circadian health also. And I truly, I swear, like, I know nothing. I am deferring to you. So just correct me where I'm wrong and be like, oh, no, sweetie, that's incorrect. But how much does our circadian health have to do with like our cell renewal and like turning things over?
No, you totally know what you're talking about.
Don't flatter me, Dr. H.
Yeah, no, you do. Yeah, no, I mean, our circadian health is really important for that cell turnover, right? Especially in our brain, when we sleep, there is this system in our brain called the glymphatic system that in effect takes out the trash in our brain. So that means we are going to have better focus the next day. We're going to be producing appropriate amounts of neurotransmitters. So that we're looking at mood, whether it's depression or anxiety. Again, the focus thing, at least partially dependent on our neurotransmitters. Sure. It's going to affect our hormonal sensitivity. So it's going to affect our fasting glucose, which has an impact on cravings and has an impact on weight. So there's so many different magical things that sleep does. And, if you are someone who just really sees sleep as your Achilles heel, I encourage you to start to learn about it, because that's really, for me at least, like I work with learners. And so I'm always like, okay, we're going to dig on this. And I give people homework assignments so that they can learn about their bodies. Yeah. There's a man named Matthew Walker, who's a sleep scientist at he's at UC Berkeley. Okay. And he has a book called Why We Sleep. But also, if you like podcasts, just Google Matthew Walker sleep. You'll find a gajillion podcasts with him on it. Just pick one and listen to it. Yeah. It's a great way to get more information on what sleep does that you care about. Because that's what I find is really important is, when we tap into like, okay, great, why do I care about sleep? Well, okay, yeah, actually it does prevent aging. Your skin will look better over time if you are prioritizing sleep. Oh, well, suddenly I'm interested, right?
Totally,
You know?
totally. If that's all it takes.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
So another thing too that I think gets a little bit confusing for people, we always hear, you should be drinking so much water. And then sometimes it feels like, well, maybe that's too much, or like, where is this water source coming from? Like, what kind of water should we be drinking? How much water should we be drinking? Should we be adding things to our water?
Right. Yeah. Great question. So with the water conundrum, you want to think about, okay, what do you see as your ideal weight, and cut in half? And that's roughly the amount of ounces,
Okay.
just to ballpark it,
Yeah.
so kind of not so dissimilar from the protein world. 60 to 80, something like that is pretty. And if you're more active, have a little bit more in the way of what type of water. I do love, when people can get filtered water, or even better, spring water. Love it. The thing about filtered water is you're pulling out some of the electrolytes that you can find in water. So you can, use a filtered water, and then maybe once or twice a day, use an electrolyte replacement. The electrolyte replacements that I like depend on the individual. And how I think about this is, if you're someone who is exercising hard and sweating a lot, or going into the sauna, things like that, then I would recommend Element. So that is what, and I don't have an affiliation with them, but that's what
I love too, Dr. H, and I don't have an affiliation with them either, but I do love Element.
Yeah. That's a nice one. But if you're someone who's not sweating a lot, then I'm going to be more encouraging of something like Ultima. So Ultima is another really nice, clean electrolyte replacement. It just has a little bit less salt than Element, which I'm not anti-salt. I'm like, okay, if you're not sweating a lot, let's use the Ultima, and then use your high quality salt, your Himalayan salt, your sea salt on your food. So that's the way I think about that.
So just a little tangent question that popped into my mind. Why is it that, because I drink salt with my water and I find it like very hydrating, and I love it. But when I will either recommend it to someone, like my Aunt Barbie, shout out, hi Aunt Barbie, but she'll be like, I can't do that because I swell. Like the salt makes my hands swell. So what is that? Like, why is it okay?
You are probably getting, I would suspect, sufficient potassium and magnesium.
Okay.
And your awesome Aunt Barbie may be a little bit lower on those guys, on the magnesium and potassium. So oftentimes it's just a balance of these electrolytes that can be a little bit off.
Okay, interesting. Yeah. It's such a dance. It's like, and that's why it's so important to, I'll find something that I love and I'll recommend it to someone, but it might not be great for them and vice versa, same for me. I found things that were recommended that just did not work for me. Just on the topic of things that work for some people and not for others, especially when getting into the whole wedding planning process, being a bride, like you should see my cabinets filled with supplements. I'm not a bride, but like that's kind of how this whole journey started. There are so many supplements, and some of them, like maybe they're fad supplements, maybe they're not. But fish oil had its moment in time. Collagen, colostrum is like now everywhere. So, what? Should we just be taking all of these things? Like, what should we be doing?
That's such a good question, Adriana. No, simple answer is no, right? Like really, when I work with people, I recommend the supplements that are appropriate for their body's needs. And we learn that based on your labs. We learn it based on science. Mm-hmm. So, when I talk about things like collagen powder, I'm not worried, it's protein, right? You kind of can't go wrong with it. Should everyone be taking it? Not necessarily. If you're someone who's like, I just want to get my protein from food, great. Just get your protein from food. That's no problem, right? So with all these possible supplements, I'm always looking at, okay, this person, what is their intended outcome? What are they dealing with right now? Do they have acne? Do they have digestive distress? Are their hormones all wackadoodle? Like they're struggling with their PMS or their periods are, irregular,
Yes.
then, we're going to take a step further, do labs to understand what's at the source of their challenges and conundrums. And then we're going to supplement according to their body's needs. And I love that you said you have a cabinet full of supplements, because one of my favorite things is, people will come to me and they'll have their cabinet full of supplements, and they'll be taking, like, there's a woman who I'm working with who literally, I have a spreadsheet for her. It's unbelievable.
Oh my gosh.
And we went through, and I'm like, okay, we're getting rid of this, and we're getting rid of that, and we're getting rid of that. You're going to change the dose of that. And, so we get, based on labs, we look at, okay, what is actually required here for this intended health future? And and by the way, I love that you mentioned colostrum. I'm going to resist the urge to mention the name of the brand that's doing a lot of marketing right now, but ladies, it's way overpriced. Do not buy it. Oh my God. Like, I somewhere on my desk, I actually did the math and looked at the price per day of the one that I will not name, but might start with an A. I'll just say that. And two others. And it's something like they're $2 a day for the same amount. And the one that I prefer, again, no affiliation, allergy research, colostrum, their powdered is what I like. It's like 74 cents a day. So it's really, you're paying a lot for their marketing.
Wow. Yeah.
And I'll just leave it at that.
Oh my gosh. I mean, I will say this, like, I did not know about colostrum before that, which, call me stupid, ignorant, whatever, but I didn't know about it. So if for anything, I'm like, all right, well, like, if it gets the conversation going, great. But like, you are the better person to do this, and you've already done a great job. But I think we can just encourage people to, like, do their research. And just because something was marketed to you on Instagram does not mean that it is the thing for you. And maybe it is, but there are professionals that you can go to who will direct you maybe somewhere better that's actually going to be better for you, and maybe even less expensive, which will be
right. Absolutely. And, in the long run, all the millions of supplements you're trying, it's like, okay, well, just spend that money on a good assessment,
Totally. I think we always, like, want to get these little Band-Aid things for our health and our wellness and our beauty. But then when it comes to making an investment that's actually going to help us in the long haul, we're like, well, I would never spend that much money. Well, you spent that much money in colostrum last year. So
truly. And like, the 30 supplements that are in your cabinet that you haven't looked at, right. And I get it. Like, listen, they make these things look so amazing that if I didn't know better, I'd be buying them too. Like, I will, like, go down the rabbit hole on Instagram just like anybody else. Yes. And then I'll pull it up and actually dig for the ingredients. And I'm like, man, that is just a crock,
Oh my gosh. I can only imagine. There are things that I've cycled through, things that I found that I love, but you're right. It's like, it gets to a point where it's like, is what we're consuming actually helping us as an individual?
Yeah, right. Exactly. That is the question to answer.
Totally. So another fad thing that I just wanted to touch on with you, a lot of wellness practices that people do. So, some that come to mind, like cold plunging, sauna, red light therapy, grounding, sunning, all of these things that we hear, like, we should be implementing these things into our day. And it's difficult to do every single thing. Are there any that you think are just hogwash, overrated, or do you have recommendations on how we can kind of fit all of these things in, maybe not every day, but like periodically?
Yeah. I look at it through the lens of a few different things. One is, okay, what is my intended outcome? But also, what is creating more stress and what is actually being of use to me in my life? Mm-hmm. Right. So, like the cold plunge, for example, for me and my body that runs cold, the idea of doing a cold plunge, like, I could cry, like, just thinking about it, right? Like, no, totally. Just not happening, right? But the idea of sweating, totally sign me up. That's great. So you want to be a little bit, looking through the lens of, okay, which one of these does not feel like punishment? Because categorically speaking, either you have to shift the way you're looking at something, like reframe it, or you have to choose a different solution. Like staying with something that feels like punishment, not a great thing for our beings, right? So I'd start with that. And then, something like red light therapy. Yes, red light therapy has lots of different benefits to offer. So if you have access to red light therapy, great. If you don't, okay, let's think about other things that have been shown to be rejuvenating in their own ways that you can do without access to something like that. A hot bath, right? You could actually take a really hot bath. Great. Going out in nature, right? There's so much to be said about being surrounded by nature. So, they call it nature bathing or forest bathing in Japan, right? So there are little things like that can go a long way, but I would really invite people to pick one or maybe two of these kind of fun things that can augment our health, to bring into your life and make that choice based on what is just naturally most compelling to you. Try it on and see what you notice. See if you notice you feel different while you do it, or you look different while doing it, after doing it.
Yes. Yeah. Because I think a lot of times the way that we look after something like that can tell us a lot about what something is doing to our body. Like our body will let us know, or mine does. I mean, mine definitely lets me know, like, I was eating something I shouldn't have been last night, and my elbows they're like itchy. They have their psoriasis on them. Like my body's telling me that was wrong.
Yes. Yeah. And I'm with you. My body lets me know too. And there was a point in my life where I was like, damn it. But now I'm really grateful, right? Like you were saying with the biotin, like, right. It's a wonderful thing when you actually have the message like of, no, this is not for my body. Okay. Now I know I can respect that.
Yeah. It sucks to give up something that maybe you love and you enjoyed, but what you called it a swap opportunity. And I loved that. Like you can find other things that you love. It doesn't have to be, gluten or whatever. Like once you shift to what's best for your own body, you'll learn to love those things. And it's really hard. Like it was a really, really difficult transition for me. I basically was crying to my mom and my husband. I was like, I can't eat any of the things that I like. And my husband's like, God, I'll take the psoriasis over this. Like, you're so
That's
catty.
great. Oh my God.
But you learn how to kind of navigate it, and you find other things that you might not have ever tried that you love.
Absolutely. You're so right. And, I often am with people when they are in tears, trying to figure out how they're going to come to terms with this, this path forward. And just like you were saying, new solutions arise, we come up with them. And then when people start to feel better and see the difference and how they're looking and all of it, it's like, oh, okay. I definitely don't want to go back to how it was.
Totally. There's nothing that feels better than like looking at yourself and feeling like you're glowing, and I don't know, when other people tell you too, like sometimes you can't tell, and then someone will say like, wow, are you doing something different? Are you using something on your skin? It's like, maybe this stuff does work.
Right. Absolutely. 100%.
So Dr. H, I'm like, I would try to keep you all day, but I know that you have other things to do. And I just want to round it out with something that we do every episode. We call it an after party. And this is just going to bring us back to weddings. This is not health related. This is just like fun wedding questions. So if you would be so kind, I would love if you would do this little round with me.
Sure.
Okay. Awesome. So our first after party question is, if you could go anywhere on a honeymoon, where would you go?
Well, I have to say, I haven't yet been to Taormina in Sicily, so I'm going. That's number one. That's the answer there.
I'm dying to go also, and I might be going in August today. Like
amazing. I have it on the radar for October. It's my birthday in October, so I'm like, okay, let's do that.
Hell yeah. Oh my God. That sounds so gorgeous.
And I'll have to reach out to you and get your tips. Cause if you're there in August, I'm like, where do we eat? Where do we stay? All this stuff.
Oh my gosh. That's like my favorite hobby is figuring out where to go and what to do on a trip. So I hope I go. And if so, I will hook you up for sure.
Love it. Awesome.
All right, Dr. H, what would be your dream wedding cake flavor?
So I know this might sound odd, but last year, this was actually for my husband's birthday, we had dinner at this restaurant where the amazing dessert was a vanilla mousse, like chocolate mousse, but vanilla. And I'd never tasted anything like it before. So I'm going to go with the vanilla mousse.
Vanilla mousse. Oh, that sounds delicious.
It was so good. It was amazing. I'm still talking about it, and I don't even really eat that many sweets.
Oh my God. I got to get my hands on this. I have a bad sweet tooth. It's so bad.
It was gluten-free and dairy-free also, by the way. Yes.
Oh, there we go. Then it's
exactly.
Free. I love it. All right, Dr. H, what song will get you on the dance floor at a wedding?
Oh my gosh, almost any song because I love dancing.
Oh.
But I mean, I can go with an oldie but goodie, Rapper's Delight.
Oh, love it. Love it. That's so good. No one ever says that. That's a great answer.
Yeah. Just good, clean fun, you know?
Absolutely. Okay. If you could invite any living surprise guest to your wedding, who would it be?
Oh my gosh, that is such a good question. Living surprise. Okay, let's just go with like Beyonce, you know, because why not? That would be amazing.
Why not? I know. I think about this a lot, and I always change my answer to this in my head. I'm like, well, you know, Beyonce might detract from like the whole event, but also like she would be in my wedding. Like I could get to dance with Beyonce.
Exactly. And I'm like, okay, wait, teach me that move. Okay, cool.
Totally. Okay. And then last question is, if you could give one piece of advice to anyone planning a wedding, what would you tell them?
Really remember what this is for, fundamentally speaking, right? It is, your wedding is going to be an expression of joy, a celebration of your love. I don't know about you, but I know that when I walked down the aisle, I was not prepared for the swoosh, the swirl, just the amazing amount of love.
Yes.
And, you know, the people who are there to celebrate you, they love you to pieces. So soak it in and have so much fun. Have so much fun.
When did you get married, Dr. H?
I got married in 2012.
Okay.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And when and where?
So we got married in Chicago. We're from Chicago. And we got married at the Racket Club of Chicago. We did it all at this club that we belong to. So our wedding was there. Our reception was there. We did it all there.
That is, oh my God. It sounds,
it was wonderful.
I love Chicago. That's so nice. And you've been married since 2012. That's so exciting. And
and you know, like as I shared, I'm 47. So I got married later in life. You know, I was 36 at the time when we got married, and I hadn't been married before. My husband, obviously a little older than me. And you know, it was beautiful. It was wonderful.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. That's so sweet. And thank you for sharing everything that you did today. It was so generous, and I learned so much. I hope everyone else learned a lot. Where can everyone find you, Dr. H?
So you can find me at wellempowered.com or on Instagram at wellempowered. And for those of you who are interested in exploring working together, please go to our website, schedule a complimentary consultation, and make sure you let me know that Adriana sent you, because you will be gifted with 10% off if we do move ahead and working together.
Love it. And I will note that all in the bio. Again, thank you so much for doing this. Thank you so much for listening to the episode today. Please like, review, rate, subscribe, follow, whatever the things are. It's really, really helpful. If you do support us, there's something in it for you too. You'll have the opportunity to win a free prenup bridal prep planner. We give one away every month. I have the directions on how to do that below, so make sure you check that out. Thank you again for listening. Happy planning. See you next Wednesday.